Hello, all.
Morning.
Hi.
Give people a bit to join. I'll drop this again later, but we also have our notes doc where people can mark their attendance. And I don't see Deanna on the call yet. Let me send her a message. Okay, so I just heard back from Deanna. She's no longer planning on joining us today. That was the main topic I had in place. So let's see. We do have other outstanding topics. I'm not sure if anybody has anything else they're prepared to talk about today.
Hi, Keith. I wanted to propose the topic new project. So, but my let's say preparation is only for just like 5 minutes, unless there is some discussion around that topic. I put it in the Slack channel before, but um, yeah, I'm prepared only for just like 5 minutes. So that's one of the things we can discuss.
Okay. Okay, so we may have a short meeting then today. Get back to your proposal. Okay, I think allowed people time to join enough, since the main topic has fallen through. Why don't you go ahead, Asama?
Yeah, sure. So my basically idea for the new project was to uh, kind of extend the works that we have separately done in the two projects before, and I don't have any prepared presentation for that, so bear with me for some of the details. So the idea basically is that last time I presented this, I think in last couple of meetings, I was presenting and representing this thing about the Intel's RATLS, which I still believe, and that may disagree, but it's primarily aimed at pre-handshake attestation, and it's the way it is let's say specified. It may be implemented in some other way, but according to our understanding, at least, it needs major changes in the protocol itself, and then it's no longer RATLS, it will be RATLS plus plus or something else. So anyway, the idea is that we have in one of the CCC projects pre-handshake attestation. We have another proposal in the CCC, which is the intra-handshake attestation, the IETF draft, which we are working on the verification as well. So for this project, my idea was that, and that's also one of the questions that came up, and I didn't have any good answer because actually there is no literature to my knowledge, which has explored the let's say the security of the post-handshake attestation. And there, one idea is that we one of our interest is also to analyze the COCO project, and there I was interested in analyzing the KBS attestation protocol. Sorry, so this is okay, and then so that is one side of the story for this, that we have pre-handshake attestation, Intel's project ongoing. The intra-handshake we have, and post-handshake we can analyze its security. That's one perspective. And from the other perspective, which we have in our formalizations, which we have formalized in our previous work, is Intel SGX, DCAP and APID schemes, and from the confidential processes perspective. And for confidential VMs, we have Intel TDX and ARM CCA, the third project that we had. And then we were looking into confidential containers, and there is no work, again, to my knowledge, which is kind of exploring this confidential containers kind of domain and the protocols which are used inside. There is no, let's say, new project from the verification perspective itself, because the KBS protocol itself will be using the TLS protocol, and more specifically, it is using the HTTPS protocol for the communication between the KBC and the KBS, and also for the reference values. I think the proposal is also to use the HTTPS protocol. So overall, it's only using the HTTPS protocol inside. And there we have the TLS formalization already. And the attestation for different schemes, for different TEEs, we have already. So there, my hope is that we can combine different bits together and then analyze this KBS attestation protocol. So that's the kind of thing I'm interested in analyzing.
So there was I think a few different things you touched on. Is the main part of what you're proposing for a project the last bit, the analyzing of the KBS?
So the main thing just is KBS. That's my main proposal. So the rest was just the motivation that from different perspectives, let's say from the perspective of what are different perspectives, what are the missing bits that need to be done from verification perspective. So the proposal, let's say in short, is just formal verification of KBS protocol for COCO project. That would be the project.
Okay, so previously with the verification project that you had worked on, it was building up from the hardware guarantees up to like the attestation guarantees.
Yeah.
I at least had hoped that that would tie into being able to take those attestation guarantees and apply that to protocols. Will this new project you're proposing kind of build on top of the other verification work, or tie it together in some way, or is it completely separate? I'm trying to follow what exactly you're proposing.
Right. So just to understand, from when you say that it ties to the protocol, does it mean to the TLS protocol or?
So the previously what you had built up is to be able to make some security claims about the platform based on like the individual technologies, and you'd analyzed a couple of them.
Right.
Using those base security guarantees, what my understanding at the time was is that we could build on those base security guarantees and say that if those hold true, then this protocol also has these other properties. That's what I mean by tying them together. So,
Okay.
like it makes more use of the work you'd done before if we're able to tie it back and say we have this now new formal, or we have this new analysis or formal modeling of the protocol, and its guarantees hold true if the platform's guarantees hold true, and here's proof that it does.
Right. So I think that's kind of really orthogonal to the work that we had. So we didn't really promise about any specific protocol, even in the proposal that we had before. So I would say that's a completely orthogonal thing to that, or at least when I was proposing, that was not in my mind to have some specific protocol. By protocol, I mean whether it's using TLS or SPDM or such protocols like that. So it was supposed to be only talking about the previous project that we had. So it was supposed to be only specific to the hardware provided attestation mechanisms. And there the promise was that we formalize it once and for all, and then we can use it or bind it together with different protocols, SPDM, TLS,
Sorry,
HTTP,
one moment,
whatever.
Usama, one moment. Nathan, can you mute yourself? I think we can hear you eating your meal. All right,
Right.
thank you.
So yeah, so that was that would be my opinion on that. But I'm fine if you just want it as a integration of the protocol also as part of the same project. I'm fine with it. I mean, the last work that I presented actually was doing exactly that. So that was integrating the TLS protocol, and there are now 3 ways of whether I do the handshake before, after, or in between. So that is so I mean we have the 2 bits already in there. So in Intel's RATLS, which we have already done, and for intra handshake we are already doing with the tested TLS folks in the second project. So if you want this kind of post handshake attestation as part of the same project, I mean, it doesn't matter which label we put it on top of it. So I think the work is more important than saying whether it's part of this project or a new project or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's not the administrative part of this that I'm trying to nail down. I'm trying to understand the scope of what you are proposing here
Right.
today.
Yeah.
So
My proposal at the moment would be just that we use our previous works from different from the other 3 projects and combine these bits together to analyze a specific proposal for this post handshake, which is namely this KBS protocol. And why I specifically say this KBS protocol, it's interesting because of different perspectives, that it's TE agnostic. That's one advantage of this protocol. One can use it for AMD and also for TDX, and also for new proposals, I think, which is some China TEE, something, some proposal. So I mean, it's supporting a different wide range of Ts. And one important bit from formal perspective also is that it has very nice specifications which are on a GitHub repo rather than the PDF documents which keep changing all the time. And we had discussions over that, that the specifications were keep changing for Intel on the same links, and the same documents disappear and so on. So there is a GitHub repo where the specifications are properly documented, and it's by properly documented, I mean this is so there is a repo record of what exactly was existing at this point in time. It's not that the PDF will disappear or something like that. That's important from verification perspective, because one can then trace it back that what was the, or which version we take as an input as a starting point, and then we give them feedback, or then based on that it evolves. I see that Samuel is not in the call. I had discussion with him. He was very interested in this work. He's also a lead contributor, not a lead, I mean one of the contributors to this work. And yeah, I will be happy to know if someone else would also be interested in this.
So I see there was a comment in the chat from Dan. Dan, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I used to work a little more closely on the Cocoa project. The original idea of this KBS is as a key broker. So the idea is the VM that you launch is a small VM that is representing really a container plus a little bit of middleware. And that VM attests itself to the key broker, who then relays that onto an attestation server that will tell it if it passes the verification. And then based on that, it gets to release a key back to the VM that would decrypt the container image file. So I don't know that, like, as a protocol, it's really a formal protocol. I'm not sure if it's really stable enough to analyze or formal enough in nature that you'll find it satisfying. I wouldn't tell you not to do it, but just would kind of caution that it's, I don't know if it meets your normal definition of what a protocol would be, especially for purposes of doing a formal verification.
Yeah, so what you just mentioned is one specific example of that. I mean, the secret for decryption. There could be other use cases, for example, for giving the AI model. So it could be, the secret could be really anything. So that's one specific use case for that. Regarding the maturity of the protocol itself, I would say the formal methods are really should be, or they should really be used along with the design. And we should not really wait for the thing to be mature enough. Then we have already lost a lot of time to give useful feedback, which would be useful for the designers. And at this Linux Plumber conference, I forgot, Tobin from IBM had a number of questions which were like open questions, I think, which formal methods can really address and help the designers of the team to give them useful feedback early in the design cycle, rather than just waiting that, okay, they take 6 more months to make it mature, and then we try to, let's say, formalize it, and then it takes, let's say, 6 more months to formalize that, and then until that time we have something else which we can use. That wouldn't be very fruitful, I would say.
I agree fully with this, Osama. I think the formal verification should be integrated in the design phase as early as possible.
And that's also the approach that we are using also with Thomas and Hannes and all others in the attested TLS. I mean, the design itself is not really finalized, so to say. Figure 12 in the draft version 4 itself still, even now after several cycles of discussions, still has some problems. And I think Thomas would agree that it was a useful feedback and a useful exercise that we did. And found some of the problems, highlighted these, what should be really specified inside the ITF draft also, and the security considerations and so on. I think it would be helpful
Absolutely.
also for the COCO project.
I'm speaking from experience. It's not an ideological perspective. Mine. I've seen the big advantages of integrating formal verification as early as possible, more than one time, right? More than once.
So Dan, how does that line up with your comment, your understanding of the project?
Yeah, I'm not a formal methods. I don't have a formal methods background. I probably have a mistaken impression that you would normally apply formal methods to lower level things, to things that you might strictly call protocols like TLS. Whereas this to me feels like even above a layer 7 thing, that you've got underlying protocols, like you're going to establish a TLS connection, but then you're passing much higher level constructs. Like I'm passing the entirety of the attestation, and then I'm going to make an application decision in another server, and then that will, based on a policy, release some secret. It's not necessarily like integrated with TLS or something like that.
Okay, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Osama, but I think the intent here is to find an example of kind of a post-handshake attestation exchange, which wouldn't, I think, kind of necessarily be at this level 7 or above where it's actually exchanged, and make sure that they're to analyze the security trade-offs of doing it post-handshake, with, I think, the KBS protocol being an example of doing that. It probably wouldn't need to go into the implementation of the policy evaluation, but the way that the attestation is being exchanged using the TLS session is kind of keeping the security properties that it intends to keep. Is that about right, Osama?
Yeah, I think so. So the idea is not to, let's say, go towards the policy stuff, because for policies, I'm not sure what exactly we can verify there. I mean, from a protocol perspective, we can, for example, if the firmware version is, let's say, 5.6 or 5.7 or 5.8, it's just a constant from a protocol perspective. And I can't really check anything other than saying that it should be greater than equal to that specific constant, which is, let's say, we say that the firmware version is greater than equal to 5.5. So I wouldn't, or let's say protocol verification wouldn't really give good feedback towards that policy stuff. One of my colleagues is working on the protocol, the policy verification. So that's already being tackled in that work. So I would avoid colliding with his work. So there, I'm not very interested in the policy verification, but the protocol itself, I think, can be verified without without considering the policy, or considering that as an orthogonal problem to the baseline protocol itself.
So I think in general, like to kind of extend it to what Dan's comment was, is the exchange of the attestation using TLS is itself a kind of higher order protocol that uses the TLS protocol as part of it, and it's this higher order protocol is kind of what Osama's.
I mean, it's using HTTPS, and inside HTTPS it's all TLS, right? So and then it's also using attestation, and then they have to be combined somehow, and the way they are combined is the post handshake thing, and there I don't see any problem. Like, it's then still like merging TLS with attestation, and I mean, it's a level of verification. We can of course see it at the as defined in the, as it's specified in the, let's say, KBS repo. It's the HTTPS thing, but I want to go lower level than the at the TLS level itself. That how does it play a role, and then how attestation exactly is is put
Right.
inside that.
So to give an example of what I'd imagine here is like before when we talked about like the pre-handshake and post-handshake attestation, I had discussed it in the context of the protocol that my team created here at Google, the STET and ubiquitous data encryption protocol. And in that case, it takes the session secret for the TLS key, gets the exported key material and uses that and binds it to the attestation through its knots. Like that I think is worthy of some analysis to see whether or not that is actually a proper way to convey the attestation and have the security properties maintained. So I like that's what I imagine Usama would want to be doing with some post handshake attestation. Again, I could throw out the STEP protocol as a proposal for you to look at, but if the KBS also serves to kind of as an example of post handshake, I think that's what he's after here. Greg, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I kind of latched on to Dan's comment there where he explained a little bit about KBS. I know nothing about it. And he talks about it seems to be coordinating some sort of key release. And I just wanted to throw out there, it's another example of a key release protocol. It's Azure specific, but there's what we call a SKR, secure key release process that works between our key management system and any any confidential compute environment that needs to gain access to a key needs to have a key share from it. So if you're looking for examples of key release systems to do some formal analysis on, I can give you an example of a shipping product. Now it's probably yet even higher up in beyond level 7, as we're kind of saying, in that it doesn't actually depend upon the raw attestation evidence. It depends upon the results of a verification service. So first so it consumes, the results from, let's say, for example, both the Intel verification service and the Microsoft MAA verification service, that they support the same kind of, or they can generate the same JWT token format. So it may be just a little bit too far-fetched or too far out there in terms of kind of the levels we're currently studying. But just wanted to throw that out there as potentially another example of something to poke into, perhaps.
So
Yeah, sure.
it sounds like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Oh,
so I was just saying that would be great if you can share the link and what it really to explore. I mean, it's still a related work. I mean, it's in the category of that protocol, and in my mind, let's say doing one specific example is not just doing, let's say, having a single use case. It's kind of leading the way to analyze other similar protocols in the same category by utilizing the open source artifacts. So let's say in my mind, when we do analysis of Intel's RATLS, so it's not meant to be Intel's RATLS. It's meant to be useful for other protocols also in the same category, which are using the similar kind of things and just moving things around. And so other people can then use these artifacts in a meaningful way to analyze their own protocols that they design in the future. Maybe that would still be useful for them. So and the reason again was also that KBS protocol itself would be more diverse as compared to, if I understand correctly, the protocol that you are mentioning is only for AWS, right?
It's an Azure specific protocol. There happens to be 2 verification services that support the input attestation result format, but yes, it is the protocol I'm talking about is Azure specific.
Is AWS, is that Azure Web Services? Is that...
No, Amazon, AWS is Amazon.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, you know that, Dan. Quit pulling my leg.
No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, just one other thing to be aware of with Cocoa. My impression, again, as I start to learn a little bit more about formal methods, is that you typically have like a a specification that you're working through, as opposed to a lot of these open source projects that you're going to come across, the code is the specification. So you'll find docs in the repo that were maybe a starting point for the development, but usually the development kind of runs ahead of somebody remembering to go back and fix the docs. So it's just that consideration for you as you approach it.
Okay. Do you have what you feel like you need to take some next steps, Usama?
Sorry, my connection disconnected. I didn't follow what the last comments were. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I can repeat. So I was just saying that in a lot of open source projects, the code is the specification. So while you might find some documentation in the repo, usually that lags behind implementation decisions that have been made. So I don't know how you would normally approach it, if you would approach it with the assumption that there's a specification. In this case, if you're going to go down the COCO path, you might want to just consider that the code is the spec.
Does that make sense, Usama?
Yeah, that's fine. I think with Samuel on board, we will not only focus on the specification document, so we will try to make the model basically from the implementation itself.
Okay, great. But as a summary, I do like this kind of analysis is what I was hoping we'd be building towards when you started your formal verification. This kind of was my point earlier. I think this is very valuable. I think having some analysis of the pre-handshake, post-handshake, and your proposal for intra-handshake is a great place for us to be able to have some discussion around the benefits of each. So I'm fully in favor of pursuing some efforts here.
Cool, thanks a lot.
Okay, anything else on this topic? Okay, and I know I pinged you over chat, Deanna. I see you joined now. Is there anything related to the attestation evidence collection standards that you wanted to comment on, or not at all now?
I think I need a little bit more time to discuss with Thomas and company.
Okay, fair enough. So we can work out for a future session, perhaps. Okay, so we did end up taking about half of the hour talking about Usama's proposal for analyzing the post-handshake. I'll add the note here: post-handshake attestation exchange analysis. Okay. So a little more than the 5-minute estimate, which is quite all right. I think it was a good conversation. Do we have anything else anybody would like to bring up this week? If not, we may finish a little early. Do people have any topics they'd like to prepare for next time, since we have some time for administrative discussion?
I think we had some open topics which we wanted to discuss, some open issues which were left last time from discussion.
Right.
So,
We have a number of open GitHub issues that were listed last time. Let me.
I can comment that the reason I'm pausing is due to the ongoing confusion around composite attesters, and I know that is an open issue left to discuss. I know Yogesh has written quite a bit on this, and Thomas has a good idea of what he'd like to see. So a more thorough discussion would be appreciated.
can we frame what that open discussion is? I have the GitHub repo open now. It says, let's see, a deeper discussion is required in CCC as how different member organization would want to see the composite attester modeling and how the format of the attestation token would span out, meeting all the necessary security objectives. So this, when it's talking about composite attester modeling, can someone familiar with the open GitHub issue, perhaps you, Deanna, or if Yogesh is on the call, like what are some concrete examples of where the ambiguity lies?
Suppose you have a TPM, a virtual TPM that is implemented in a pairvisor part of your Cevis and TVM, and it does some measurement, but you also depend on the AMD firmware to measure that initial component. And then you also have GPU attestations from NVIDIA, and you need to collect all of these together and say that this is your trusted topology of attesters to combine evidence to send off. But the signed parts are only coming from each component and not the combined evidence. So if you're doing a pre-handshake attestation, then you could have manipulation in there for a different composition. If you have post-handshake attestation, then I'm not familiar with what the expectations are there. It sounds like some folks are want pre-handshake attestation. I don't quite understand how that's supposed to work when you have a composite evidence and you somehow need to exchange a key to make that evidence integrity protected as well.
Okay, so backing up to the beginning of what you were saying, so there's the, for instance, an accelerator like a GPU having its own form of attestation, the CPU having its form of attestation. You had also mentioned, was it the firmware as a third one? What was the third one you had mentioned?
Pairvisor. So in 7CP, there's the secure, the supervisor module, SVSM, and that can implement a TPM service. So there are measurements that go into extra protected memory that the rest of the guest can't see. And you can have like binding to combine the TPM and the pairvisor in your evidence. But when it comes to how do you form trust in the combined evidence without a key to sign the combination, because I don't know how you establish that key for an ephemeral VM, to establish that trust. I'm still a little hazy on that part.
Okay, yeah, I think this is probably worthy of a deeper discussion. I don't know if people want to get into it any this week or wait until there's something more formally prepared for a future week. Does anybody have any?
If I just throw my 2 cents out on a couple topics. One, Deanna, if you want to get with me offline, I can connect you with folks in Azure or represent to the best of my ability how Azure associates a fixed key with the VTPM as the VTPM flows between different physical machines as the VM moves around. And there's a mechanism Azure has that does that, and I could share how that works. And it's public knowledge. I think it's documented somewhere. So I could do my best to represent that to you. Back to the composite attestation. I thought that in my simple thinking, kind of how I was thinking about the space was more and more there'll be scenarios where collections of attestable entities are coming together, for end-to-end scenarios. And kind of the starting point in my mind was, how do we think about, and I have to be attestation results schema centric mostly. So I'm thinking about how do we model these collections in a way that's consistent and most useful for the parties that need to use it, for example, relying parties. So you can imagine circumstances where the collection of these are loosely coupled. It's just, they may or may not have any specific relationship to each other than some untrusted party perhaps just brings them together and says, here's a bucket of, attestation evidence for different components. And since it is attestation evidence, they're kind of meaningless unless they're each at least individually signed. And then there's circumstances where there's some tethering of some specific relationship between the components, such as what I think Diana was outlining, where you have a confidential VM in a cloud service provider. It's based on AMD technology. You have a paravisor with a VTVM, and you have some confidential GPU plugged into it. And so where do you, how would you structure all of this? Assuming it's possible to cryptographically prove that all of these things are tethered together in one environment, how would you represent that? And I guess my mind wasn't, the problems of how you cryptographically prove that is not the conversation I thought we would be having here. It was about, how do we model this? Assuming it's cryptographically provable, how do we model it? Are they nested? Are they a collection with, cross references to each other? Where's the signatures? How many? Things like that was kind of where I thought this conversation was going, versus I think the harder problems of how do we, cryptographically and securely ensure that all these things are tied together.
Well, Thomas had proposed a change to the conceptual message wrapper to include collection types last night, and it was merged this morning. So
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to comment on it, but that sounds like where Thomas is wanting to go.
Yeah, that's certainly one option. And I guess I'll just say I'm a little confused. For example, for those of us that are kind of centering in EAT as an attestation result format with its submod structure, right? How does this play into it? And so anyways, that's those kind of conversations I would imagine, or conversations and different perspectives on that. I would kind of imagine as part of these kind of discussions. I don't see it yet as there is one answer. I think this is an emerging space with, lots of moving parts and lots of ideas.
I think with the idea of the evidence, including its collection type, the submod would say that its device topology matches that collection type.
What do you mean by collection type in that statement?
So the collection type that is added to the CMW says that when you have several CMWs nested within one, then you can name that collection in a way that it's addressable with a media type. Right? So you say this is an application CMW plus CBOR semicolon, this CMW collection type equals, and then an OID. Right, and that OID would represent, this is SEV-SMP plus VTPM plus NVIDIA GPUs.
I see.
I think though, Greg, that yes, the way we actually materialize the topology is very relevant, and I think we have at least two options at the moment that we can discuss. One is the submods based, and the other one is the CMW that Diana was mentioning. But I think the idea of how do we trust the lead attester is a very important topic, and I think the whole security is based on that, right? On being able to positively answer that question. So, I mean, we can do certainly the discussion on formats, but I think it's very, very important that we get an understanding of how the lead attester is trusted and how we establish that link.
So you're saying, Thomas, that we do need to discuss how the evidence is cryptographically tied to each other. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Especially the role of the lead attester in this. Because
I don't disagree but it seems, and I'm certainly happy to, I'm certainly happy to discuss. It seems like a very hard problem that, different vendors are probably actively working on, and so I'm not quite clear what would be the outcome from these discussions. They seem like they have to be made concrete, like picking what would be the outcome? And
to me,
could
it would
we
be the discussion of concrete proposals, right? So you need to show me that this is how it works and that it works. You say many vendors are doing this at this point in time. It would be good to socialize those designs, I think.
Yeah, I'm hypothesizing that folks are, because I think that these scenarios are quickly coming down the pike, right? As Deanna described, right? You can just imagine one where you have the triplet that she described, right? So somebody needs to be thinking about. I imagine, I'm not speaking from my personal experience here, but I just imagine that there are people actively thinking about how do we cryptographically tie all these things together. And I don't know if any of this stuff is, if anybody's created any public facing documentation on their thinking in that space.
That's what I'm trying to get here, right? So that we sort of do this early socialization of the aspects, because that can help make smooth the process of getting to a solution that is shared and is secure.
So let me try this. So let me erase my pessimistic statement of like, I'm not sure what we can accomplish here, and replace it with a more optimistic one and say, sure, let's. I'm happy to spend time discussing and seeing what progress we can make here, what learnings, what socialization we can do. So
cool, excellent.
I can say that we have our own bespoke protocol buffer that we'd like to change to a standard format.
So it sounds like there's the two different things that need to be discussed. There is, when we have these more complicated attested systems with multiple independent things being attested, or at least semi-independent, how can you get a consolidated attestation that combines them in a meaningful way, like regardless of how it's conveyed? And then there is, how do you convey it? How do you package it all together and send it in a way that is, makes sense and can be digested by a relying party? Does that sound right? They kind of seem like two separate but related problems.
That sounds accurate based on my understanding of the last 10 minutes. And I'll posit that the format doesn't require figuring out how you do it. I think we're unblocked. I think we're more unblocked to discuss the format than potentially the how you do it. But that's just my guess.
You say we are more blocked or more unblocked? What was that?
More unblocked to discuss the format. Given that it's possible, how you represent it.
I think that's fair. I think that's entirely fair.
I agree.
Okay. So in a future meeting, would we be willing to discuss the format? I know that there are multiple options, multiple different standards even around doing this. Is anybody willing to
Yeah.
present?
I can present CMW if you want.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful for at least me. I'm not nearly as familiar with CMW. I think I've only run across it a couple times. Not nearly as familiar as I am with something like EAT submods. So, okay, I'm going to add it into the backlog section of our document. Okay. All right. I think we are trending towards the end of the meeting now. It's probably not worth starting a new topic. For like purely administrative, any of the other co-chairs willing to take the next meeting? I think it should be 2 weeks from now. I don't think there's anything, any holidays or events that would block that.
Yeah. If I need to present CMW, I don't know whether I qualify as a good, but I can take that if you want.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Thomas. Okay. I think if there's nothing else, I think we're probably ready to adjourn.
Thanks
Thank you,
all. Have a
everybody.
good day.
All right,
Thank
as well.
you. Bye.